I got to spend the last week with this new BMW iX xDrive 50, and quite honestly, I've loved nearly everything about this electric luxury SUV. But there are two big things I'd think about before buying one. So today, let's take a close look at the features, range, efficiency, interior, take it for a long drive, and see what this insanely good EV is all about. So when this luxury two-row EV crossover debuted a couple years back, it looked like it was plucked straight out of the future. Now, heading into 2025, it still offers the same impressive performance, range, and design sophistication. And it still turns heads with its, bold exterior design. The iX is roughly the same size as a gas-powered X5. Here in the States, it's available in two trims, this xDrive 50 starting at around 88 grand, and the performance-oriented M60 starting at over 101 grand. The xDrive 50 has an estimated range of over 300 miles depending on the wheels and tires, and churns out 516 horsepower. The M60 gives you less range, around 285, and delivers a stupidly high 610 horsepower. All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, or the big nose in the room. If you've seen any new BMW design lately, you're well aware that their design language is polarizing. So I don't personally like how this large fake grille and these black plastic triangles look here, but everyone's taste is different. Now there's actually something really cool going on with this big fake grille. Not only does it have this interesting triangle motif going on, but it's also made of self-healing polyurethane. So if it gets scratched, it will heal itself. No, I'm not gonna scratch this. BMW will probably kill me, but it would heal itself, or so I'm told. So I guess the BMW iX is basically like the T1000 in Terminator 2. Also, check this out. This BMW badge serves a secondary function other than just branding. Press right there, and now you can fill your washer fluid. And this is basically because BMW doesn't want you messing around under the hood. There's no frunk under here and nothing user serviceable. Still seems kind of weird that they did not include a front trunk though. Although this is kind of neat, I guess. The rest of the iX design is pretty straightforward. The side profile is clean and free from styling gimmicks. This black panel with the iX badge in the back here separates the side from the top, giving it a floating roof look. I also really like these sort of squared off fender flares here. Overall, this side profile doesn't really look that much different from any other SUV, but there's only so much you can do with this shape. And what do you think of these optional 21-inch wheels? They're all right, not my favorite. Don't love them, don't hate them. And on the back of the passenger side right here is the charging door, and it opens with a simple press. I'm glad that there's not some sort of electronic gimmicky door here. It's very simple. Now out back, this is probably my favorite angle of the iX. I really dig these thin taillights. It looks really great from back here. Now it seems like you're not allowed to make a futuristic looking EV without reinventing the door handles, and that's exactly what BMW did here. But they work great, there's no moving parts, they're flush with the body to help with aerodynamics. All right, let's open the door and bask in the luxury that we will find inside. So once you're inside, you're greeted with a satisfying array of textures, colors, and materials, expertly assembled with top-notch fit and finish. Everything looks and feels as premium as this price point would require. And it's very unique with this very soft textured material on the dashboard and the upper door panels. So we've got the stone gray microfiber wool blend interior. However, a bunch of other really excellent looking cabin choices are available. So not only does this look really good, but BMW did put a decent amount of effort into making sure that this was a bit more eco-friendly. They use recycled materials like old fishing nets and nylon waste in the manufacturing process. So these seats have some really interesting stitching patterns on them, and they're extremely comfortable for me. I'm 6'3" and I have loads of headroom, loads of legroom, and a lot of space from side to side here. My knee doesn't hit the center console, which is nice. These seats are of course power adjustable. We also have a massage function for both front seats, and they are heated, but are they ventilated? Turn on ventilated seats.
Unfortunately, this vehicle is not equipped with seat ventilation or seat cooling.
Oh well, not ventilated. Seems like a little bit of an oversight for a $100,000 car. And you might notice that these seats are a bit wider and flatter than what you might find on other BMW products. They are geared much more towards cruising comfort rather than sports car-like support. One thing to keep in mind though is that there is no adjustable headrest here. So depending on your height or your body type, this might be an issue that affects comfort for you. My head just happens to line up with it perfectly, but it may be an issue if you're a little bit shorter. Now, when we look forward towards the dashboard, you'll notice an extremely clean, simple, and minimal layout. There's very few physical buttons on the dash, and there are a handful on this extremely weird looking hexagonal steering wheel. I'm not even sure I can really call it a wheel because it's not round, so it took me a little while to come around to the shape of this steering input device, but I don't mind it. But some people must not have liked this because for 2025, BMW is offering a round wheel as an option. So behind this somewhat oddly shaped steering input device is a curved display that looks like it's sort of floating on the dashboard, and it wraps around to the center of the car. I really dig it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of customization here depending on what you want to see. You can view the camera system up here. You have your navigation show up here, G-forces, I don't know why you really need that. And then, of course, your music. And we'll get to the modes in a second, but depending on what mode you have selected, I'll put it in sport mode right now. And you can see that the look of the gauges just changed. So in general, the graphics in front of the driver are clean and very easy to read. Maybe trying a bit too hard to be futuristic, but overall, it works very well. All right, so let's move on to the center right here. And as I mentioned, almost no physical controls on this dashboard. You can set your front defrost, rear defrost, and you can turn on and off your hazards, but that's it. So this, of course, means that many of the functions that you'll need to interact with on a regular basis are primarily available via this touchscreen. And down here on this center console, we do have these capacitive touch buttons and a rotary dial that allows additional control over the infotainment system other than just touching the screen. So I do appreciate that there are some sort of quasi-physical controls, but the haptic feedback is very, very slow. So right here, we've navigated back to our main screen, and on the left, there's a few different things that you can choose from. They got this personal assistant where you can ask questions about the infotainment system. I'm assuming because there's a lot going on and you're probably going to need help if you're not used to this vehicle. And then if you toggle this over to the right, quick select to your navigation, your modes, live vehicle data, and your media. So that's only part of it. If we actually want to see all of the apps that are available, because there are many, we actually have to click this button right here. And now you'll see a huge array of apps that control different parts of the car. Cool thing is you can move these apps around. If you don't really like where they are, you can customize the screen, and that's pretty useful. I will say that the graphics are very clean, the system is very responsive, and there are a ton of settings here that can be accessed and modified. And you can select them with a rotary dial, but there are a lot of things to choose from here. So if you happen to love technology and the novelty of consolidating physical controls into menu systems and making your car feel a bit more like a computer, you might really love this slick interface. But if you're someone that's maybe a bit more resistant to change, or you're used to a vehicle with physical controls for air conditioning, you may find that your first few times in the iX aren't exactly instantly gratifying. So we do have a 4-zone climate control system here, and you can adjust the temperature settings right here on this ever-present bar. Even if you go to a different menu, let's go to the home menu, you can still access the temperature here. But if you're on another page, you will need to navigate back to this climate page to adjust any other settings. And once you're on this page, yes, you can use the rotary dial to adjust some of these settings. But in general, this interface might make you feel like you're driving an iPad instead of a car. The lack of physical controls and having all of the settings available on the screen means that there is more potential for your eyes being on this screen rather than what's in front of the vehicle. And yes, it is cheaper for automakers to start removing physical controls from vehicles and just stuffing everything into screens. But I do think BMW doesn't really want you to interact with the screen very much because they do offer some really comprehensive voice controls. So instead of fumbling around with a screen, you can just do this. Set temperature to 72 degrees.
Okay, 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
Turn the fan to medium.
I will set level medium throughout.
So while I am a firm believer in physical controls in vehicles where you can operate functions without having to take your eyes off the road, I do think that voice commands, when implemented well, could be a very good substitute. But really though, I just don't want to be dealing with this menu while I'm driving. That's a lot of stuff to go through. And if you're not really a tech person, I think what you'd probably want to do is to get as much of this stuff set up before you start driving and get your driver profile completely optimized. And then maybe you don't have to interact with as much of this stuff while driving. All right, so there's also some gesture controls. Let's check those out. If you do this, it will switch to the next track. If you do this, it'll switch to the previous track. Turn your music up, turn your music down. Kind of neat, I guess, but I think it's probably just as easy to use these controls right here in front of you on the steering wheel. But I like that they tried something. And as you probably already saw, we do have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And if you notice down here, there is no phone plugged in to the USB-C jack. And that's because this has wireless CarPlay, which is very useful. One other thing that I really like is that you can interact with CarPlay using this rotary dial. All right, so moving on to this center console, they do have a really cool spot right here to hold your phone. And it might seem like kind of an odd space, but if you look right down through there, you can see that there's a perfect spot to route your power cable right up through. So you can have your phone charging right there if you want, but if you don't want your phone sticking out right there, you can drop it on the floor like I just did, or you could toss it down here on this wireless charger, which is kind of located in an odd spot. Couple small cup holders that can hold a small water bottle or a couple singamajigs. You've also got the vehicle start stop, the gear selector, pretty simple to operate right here, park button, auto hold button, here's your volume control. And right here in the center, you've got this split design center console storage. It is very small, but it does have a little light and you can fit a couple singamajigs down there. Now, I do really appreciate this very flat floor that we got down here. You could probably fit a bag down there or some other random things. And up here we have a giant electrochromic moonroof. It's super cool. Just press this button right here and it becomes opaque. Very cool. I almost forgot to mention that we have this power operated door handle right here. Just press right there and the door will open for you. It's cool, but also maybe a little bit unnecessary, especially when you have to include a backup handle right here. All right, I think that's it for the front. Let's check out the back seat. So here in the back, I have a ton of headroom. I have a decent amount of legroom, but the interesting thing back here is that the seat cushion is so very low. And that's probably why I have so much headroom in here. So my knees are kind of like pointed towards the sky. It's not exactly a comfortable seating position. I wouldn't want to sit back here on a really long ride. It's also nice to see that BMW did not skimp on the materials in the back. It looks as nice back here as it does in the front. Right here in the center, you can see that yes, BMW still does know how to do physical controls. You have controls here for your quad zone climate control. Got two vents. There's also vents over here on the sides. You got your USB-C port right here in the seat in front of you. That's very convenient. So right here in the center, you do have this pull down armrest. And right here in the front of that, you've got these very BMW-ish cup holders that pop out of this armrest. And right down here, if you pull this down, now you have a pass-through to the back. Same story on the seats back here, headrests that are not adjustable, but it is a very cool aesthetic back here. I love this little side piece right here that sort of connects the side of the car to the seat. And then this light blue sort of wraps around into the door. That's a very cool design element. Now, when it comes to having kids in your car, there's ISOFIX or latch anchors down here where you can connect your car seat. And there's plenty of space back here for a rear-facing or front-facing car seat. I also really dig these sort of hiding coat hooks that you've got here on the ceiling. That's kind of fun. And of course, back here, you do have a power liftgate that can also be operated with your foot. Now, while it doesn't exactly look that huge, it actually has a larger cargo area than the similarly sized BMW X5. We've got a decent 35.5 cubic feet with those rear seats upright. Now, if you pull on these buttons right here, it will fold those seats down in a very elegant fashion. And now we've got 77.9 cubic feet of space, which is decent. And down here is a place to store your charging cables, and there's a little bit more space for other things. There is no spare tire here. And with this liftgate open, you might wonder why there's these extra lights right here on either side. That's because there are some requirements to have lights available even when the hatch is open. And since all of the lights exist on this very giant hatch, they had to add secondary lights here on the inside. This is a pretty fast operating liftgate. So BMW does give you a pretty comprehensive suite of standard driver assistance features. You've got parking sensors, emergency braking with pedestrian detection, lane departure warning, lane keeping assist systems, and we've got adaptive cruise control here with a hands-free driving mode. And in my time with the vehicle, everything has worked out really great. Now, I've said this in other videos, but I think that one of the most important things that you should consider in terms of safety when it comes to a vehicle is how easy it is to see out of it. And with this iX, it's incredibly good out the side. You've got these little windows right here that helps reduce the blind spots here by the A-pillar. Visibility out the front is also very excellent, very large windshield. A small downside is that this vehicle is on the taller side, so it is a little bit difficult to tell where the leading edge of the vehicle is when you're in tight spaces, but it's good that you've got those parking sensors. And then moving on to the back, the view out the second row windows is pretty good. Got a pretty upright shape, so you can even see in that corner of the vehicle, which you can't with a lot of new vehicles, especially SUVs. Visibility out the rear is okay. It's not as bad as I've seen in other SUVs. And it also has a really good camera system. You've got a 360 view right there. So with the rotary dial, you can look all around your car, which is great because now you can see if there are any obstacles around you. This is probably one of the best implemented 360 cameras that I've seen. You've got a backup assistant. So let's actually try the backup assistant. So this is going to reverse me out of the spot on its own. It's a bit odd to have the vehicle do that for you, but it works really well. So the only other thing that we should mention when it comes to safety is the insanely quick acceleration that this vehicle offers. 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds, which is ridiculously quick. So I think this quest for quicker and quicker vehicles is only going to get people in trouble. 43,000 people are killed on US roads every single year. And when you have all this potential for insanely quick acceleration right there under your right foot, it provides the opportunity to take greater risks at the wheel, and it leaves a lot less room for error. 4 seconds to 60 miles per hour is extremely quick for a vehicle this big and this heavy. So if you don't want to add to those crash statistics, use that power responsibly. Okay, my safety rant is over. Let's go and drive this thing. Okay, so let's mash the throttle on this all-wheel drive iX xDrive 50. Oh geez. With 2 electric motors providing 516 horsepower and 560 pound-feet of instant electric torque, you easily get pushed back into your seat. And you may have noticed the sound design here that accompanies that acceleration. BMW actually brought in composer Hans Zimmer to help develop these sounds, which is pretty cool. So I had my mode set to personal, that's the sound we just heard, so let's switch over to sport mode. Yeah, that's just ridiculous. So not only does that set the drivetrain to sport, the driving dynamics to sport, and the steering to sport, it also adjusts your seat for sporty driving, and it gives you that different sound when you accelerate. There's a few more to choose from. Let's switch over to expressive. Now this one in particular is pretty interesting. Not only does this mode turn on my massage seats, it has this cool splotchy paint screensaver, and it provides this sort of ominous film-like score to your driving. So in general, I think these sounds are pretty interesting and they provide a whole new way of thinking about car noises, but they can be a bit much sometimes. It's just silly. It's pretty cool. It sounds awesome, but I don't know if I would want to leave it on this setting all the time. All right, let's switch this back to personal mode, make it a little bit less ominous sounding in here. And let's get back to that acceleration. This is an insanely quick car. 0 to 60 occurs in about 4 seconds. And the M60 version can do it in 3.2 seconds. And while that can be a fun party trick when you're accelerating onto a freeway, you'll probably never tap into all of that power on a regular basis. Nor should you. There really aren't that many safe places to do that, aside from maybe like a deserted backcountry road like this one. And BMW knows that most of the time in this iX, you're not going to bother with spirited driving. You're just going to cruise, whether it's lugging the kids to school or driving to work. And while you do, you'll bask in the insanely serene and quiet driving experience that this vehicle provides, assuming you don't have on one of these crazy Hans Zimmer modes. This is one of the quietest vehicles that I've driven. So quiet that you may find yourself doing well over the speed limit on the freeway because 90 miles per hour in this thing feels like 55. So that's when it's probably a good time to engage the assisted driving setting, set the speed and let the iX handle the steering. It will even assist with your lane changes. In my experience with this iX for the last week, it works really well. All right, so let's talk about range and efficiency. This xDrive 50 has a rather large 111.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it's rated at over 300 miles of range. And in some third-party tests, it exceeded that number by a huge margin. We've got the 21-inch wheels here, so this one's rated at 83 miles per gallon equivalent city and 82 highway. In terms of efficiency, I've averaged 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which is okay. Yeah, there are more efficient EVs out there, but it's not too bad considering the size and weight of the iX. When it comes to charging, the iX doesn't lead the pack. This is a 400-volt system, so it won't charge as fast as some of the newer 800-volt cars. On a DC fast charger that can deliver the 195 kilowatts that the iX can accept, it can get to 80% in under 40 minutes. Charging at a level 2 charger, it can go from empty to full in about 12 hours, which is perfectly acceptable. If you own any EV, I recommend you do as much charging at home as possible. With the current state of our charging infrastructure here in the US, depending on fast chargers is a recipe for a frustrating experience. So overall, there is really just so much to like about how this iX drives. It's super refined, super quiet, just an incredibly pleasant experience. Okay, so what does all of this come to? The iX xDrive 50 starts at just over 88 grand, and this one with the Driver Assistance Pro package, Premium package, Sport package, adaptive LED lights, and destination charge tops off at just over 101 grand. Yes, that's expensive, but what did you expect? If you want a high-end luxury crossover, this is likely one of the best you can buy, either gas or electric. If you're looking at this iX, you may also be considering the Audi Q8 e-tron. That's less expensive than this iX. The design is less divisive, but the range isn't as good. It's a similar story with the Rivian R1S. It looks awesome, it also has a lower starting price, but the range isn't as good as this iX. All right, so what's my verdict? I'd say that this BMW iX is an insanely good luxury SUV, quite possibly one of the best available for sale today. You just have to, number one, be okay with the giant nose, and number two, recognize that the infotainment system can be a bit distracting to use. Yeah, I have a couple other little nitpicks, but that's really it. EVs offer a range of benefits beyond simply avoiding gas stations. An electric car emits almost 3 times less CO2 than a gas car over its lifetime, and they're generally cheaper to operate. However, when it comes to these high-end luxury EVs, I've got questions about how EV technology will progress into the future. What's the life cycle of these EVs? Who will service these in 10 years when the warranty is up? Will manufacturers support older battery tech when they've moved on to newer systems? These are all questions that I'd want better answers to before I'd buy an EV. And if you're set on a luxury EV, I think leasing is probably the best choice. And it does seem like that's what a lot of manufacturers are pushing right now. If you've got the kind of disposable income to consider a luxury SUV like this one, you'll likely find there are some pretty good lease deals on these. All right, that's it for today. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you want to help support the channel, please buy a Hello Road t-shirt at helloroad.tv/shop. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.